r/NoSleep. Posted by u/EmoXan. There's something under my bed because of my best friend. We all remember those chain mail messages that floated around mid-200s, right? The "send this to 6 friends or this girl will rip your face off" type crap. Well, those still do exist. You'll find them usually on Instagram on those stupid accounts with the freaky spiders or some crap. Early 2020, my friend sent me one of those chain mail messages, but it wasn't the run-of-the-mill message. This message ruined my whole upbringing. For context, I was 16 when this happened, fresh into high school. My friend, who we'll call Mikey, was my best friend all through my life from backyard to elementary school and on. During high school, Mikey had a bit of a personality change. Yours would too if your dad was a belligerent alcoholic and your mom beat you. Mikey would be labeled a Columbine sympathizer, if you catch my drift. This was because of his change from bright and positive clothing to all black, eyeliner, typical emo phase stuff. He also seemed to hate everybody as he'd talk crap about everyone behind their back, but I always tried sticking up for him. Mikey then started acting weird after one day. Even with his fashion change and temperament change, he still talked to me like normal every day and sat with me every day. He still did that, but he was glued to his phone. In just a week, Mikey had his phone taken away at least 6 times for using it, and every time I looked at his phone he was on some weird chain mail message site. It seemed to have different chain mail messages you could send, but all of them looked like I was reading the Book of the Dead with the pictures it had. He'd been messaging them to our friends, or at least I thought he had since I heard them mention it. Then one day something happened to them. I didn't see most of our friends one week besides Janet, and she was an absolute mess. She came into school with hair visibly ripped out of her skull, deep scratches all over her hands and most likely her arms, and her eyes were majorly bloodshot. I tried asking her what happened, but she just avoided me, saying, "I don't want to talk about it." Then the next following days she disappeared. That night it happened, I knew I should have just gone to sleep instead of picking up my fucking phone. It was about 12:30 in the morning and I was having trouble getting to sleep. I'd been binging Ryan Gosling movies all night, which was what was probably keeping me up. I decided just to throw on some music and laid down to close my eyes and try to go to sleep. Then just as I was about to drift to sleep, my phone went off. Going against my brain screaming to go the hell to sleep, I grabbed my phone and saw a messenger text from Mikey. "Nora, take a look at this." Followed by the text, "Send this to 5 friends," that made me scoff. I humored Mikey and tapped on the message to see the full text, and that's when it clicked that I shouldn't turned my phone off an hour ago. The text was followed by an image of a bed with pitch black appendages. Bit-long claws were wrapped around the bed. But what terrified me was the foot of the bed as peeking out from the board was a face with a teeth-filled smile that was instead bright white with sharp fangs and bright red eyes. I shook off the feeling and deleted the message from the conversation. "Go to bed, Mikey, we've got school early tomorrow. I'll see you there," I told him before turning off my phone. The following days were pretty normal. Mikey acted normal, strangely normal. But then he disappeared, and something else appeared. I was laying in bed that night, reading my comic books and listening to music to help me fall asleep. I finished the book and slid it away in my nightstand before getting under my covers as my eyes slowly started to close. My eyes were closed for a good 15 minutes when I felt like I was being watched, causing my eyes to open. Nothing was there, when suddenly I started seeing 2 large arms creep up out from under my bed. I quickly moved my legs up against my chest as the arms then clasped the bed and held down on it tight as I heard a clicking sound that pierced my ears. But my eyes were the ones to feel like needles stabbing into them, as I saw the head of the thing slither out from under my bed. Its head slowly writhed upwards as a disgusting and horrifying smile inched itself up for me to see the extended canines that had to be at least 5 inches, with the rest of the teeth being sharp enough to bite through someone's skull. But the eyes, they were like looking into a black hole with a red sun in the middle of it. It was almost hypnotizing. But what was hypnotizing but also beyond fear-inducing, was its voice. "It's time, Nora." It spoke. Its voice was soft but had a bass accompanying it. It hit all of my sensory receptors and both enticed me but also disturbed me. "It's time to come in, Nora," it said as its claws rhythmically tapped my bed as if it was patiently waiting for me. I could see its bright red tongue swiping across the inside of its teeth like a prisoner's cup against the bars of the cell. "Join your friends, Nora, be with them." The creature giggled with a heart-stopping noise resembling a box of tacks being shaken. All I would do is just stare at it, as I felt that if I moved my eyes away the thing would scarf me down like a pound of beef. When the clock hit 6 p.m. the monster would just say, "We'll meet again, Nora, and you will join your friends." This routine went on until I was 18. To avoid sleep deprivation, I'd sleep during the day where my parents thankfully let me sleep for 6 hours. Once I graduated high school, I hugged my mom and dad goodbye and moved out where I found a place 2 states away. Thankfully I didn't have to make any more changes to my lifestyle, besides sleeping with my bedroom lights on. But every night, I still hear that creature's voice in my head. I still swear I see him gripping onto my bed with that disgusting and unholy face staring at me. I still hear him tell me, "It's time, Nora. It's time to join your friends. It's time to come in, Nora." Next story of this video. Posted by u/EmoXan. Don't listen to peer pressure. What kind of kid were you? Back in middle or high school, were you the rational one, or were you the type to jump off a cliff if your friends did? I happen to be the latter in this analogy. I was until I reached college where I actually didn't care what others thought of me. For most of my primary school life I had the same friends and felt comfortable with them because I wasn't the type to make many friends. These friends would always seem to pick on me or whatever the K-12 version of hazing was, but I never recognized it and passed it off as typical friend stuff, up until the 8th grade where their pressuring turned into a fight for my life. Mick was our leader as he was the oldest of us at 15 from being held back a year like everyone else. Benny and Jacob were both 14, and I was the younger one at just 12. I'd met the group when I first arrived at school. I'd been homeschooled for the beginning years of my education on the account of my parents being afraid of me going out into the dangerous world of Utah, as my dad said. Mick and the gang wanted to introduce me to the school, and that quickly turned into making me wish I'd never met them. The group didn't chastise fellow students or anything like that. Everyone kept to themselves and never really got in trouble in school. However, after school was when I'd see the group's actual interests. My friends liked to do things such as spray painting absurd things like pentagrams, crucifixes, or absurd phrases or words on other people's houses or on buildings. They also liked to mess with animals like the stray cats or dogs around the town, but they didn't seem to like me watching some of their methods that I assumed was because of my age at the time. I never participated in any of it, but I was always the lookout as Mick appointed me to prove my reliability. Mick always seemed to be the responsible one in the group. I think the charisma he had kind of blinded me. He seemed nice and caring for everyone like we were all his little brothers. Mick even taught me how to box or fight, as I didn't have any knowledge on anything like that from being sheltered and coddled most of my life. I've gotten pretty close to everyone in the group over the years of being in school, but Mick seemed the most like a big brother to me. We'd all stay close friends during school and always looked out for each other. Then when I reached the end 8th grade, Mick called a meeting for the group over at a factory at the other end of town. I told everyone in the group chat that I couldn't go out past 6, but everyone was telling me that it's urgent. "My mom already called yours, we'll get you home before 7. Mick replied. I sighed and told them I'd be on my way before grabbing my phone and heading downstairs, where I got the okay from my parents. I hopped on my bike and pedaled it to the factory, taking breaks to text in the group chat. A few minutes later I arrived at the factory to see everyone drinking some sodas and talking. Once I got there, Mick handed me a can and I cracked it open to continue talking to the gang about girls, Fortnite, briefly talking about grass before Mick changed the subject. "What's this all about, by the way?" I asked. Mick nodded. "We have a tradition in the group. To make sure you're actually willing to be in the group," Mick told me. "Benny handed me a covered tub. Nobody stuck around as long as you. So we trust you to do this," he stated. "Basically, just take the tub inside, set it down in the right spot, whistle and open it up. That's simple," Jacob explained to me. "I don't know, this doesn't seem right. I could get in trouble." I hesitated. Mick put his hand on my shoulder. "This place has been closed down since before we were born. Nothing's going to happen. Trust me," Mick said. I gulped and took the tub, then listened to Mick's instruction. I walked inside the factory and started moving through the halls as Mick told me to do. As I did, I saw the same phrases and symbols the gang had painted around town, but with black smears across them. I walked through the halls as I heard grinding and dripping coming from the beams as I just focused on the moonlight coming in through the open roof. I then found the center of the factory and sat the tub down. I whistled the best I could before opening up the tub, and I immediately regretted it. In the dim moonlight I saw a pair of bright blue eyes that started to get closer to me. I quickly pulled out my phone and shined the flashlight at it. With my crappy flashlight I could see a boy around my age ahead of me. "What are you doing here? We shouldn't be here," I called out. The boy got close enough for me to see his pale skin and the stitches across his arms, face, eyes, and mouth. "I'm looking for a new friend. You brought me an offering, so you must be that friend," the boy told me. I looked down in the tub and nearly vomited. 2 crucifixes were stuck together with the limbs of a small cat and dog, with the bodies of the animals stitched together with their organs exposed. I looked up and saw the boy smiling before watching his teeth grow with a loud cracking sound into large fangs. His fingers shot out blood as bone-like appendages pierced through his skin, seeing the same happen as the same appendages split out of his shoulders to the length of his arms. He started laughing a high-pitched cackle, and as he did I bolted down the halls. I panted heavily as I sprinted down the halls and heard more grinding and cackling, hearing it drift off as I reached the entrance to see my friends. "Guys, there's something in here," I shouted as I reached them. Mick nodded at the other two and they grabbed me. "We know, Drew," he said coldly. I struggled as Benny and Jacob dragged me back into the factory, but I dug deep and decided to fight back. I stomped on both feet of my friends and headbutted Jacob to the ground before punching Benny hard in his stomach to drop him. I was going to run before Mick stopped me by standing in front of me as he grabbed me by the throat and lifted me up. I choked as I heard the grinding getting closer. "This is what friends do, they help each other," Mick said as he strangled me. I heard the laughing getting closer and closer, so I knew I had to do something. I punched Mick in the throat, and as he dropped me I kicked him as hard as I could in the jewels to drop him to his knees. "I don't want to be friends anymore," I told Mick as I punched him across the face. I stepped over his body and ran out of the factory before getting against the wall as I heard the laughing come up right to the entrance. "3 new friends? This makes me so happy." I heard the boy giggle. I then heard 3 pairs of screams and listened as they got farther and farther away, until I couldn't hear them anymore. I heard on the news that Mick, Ben, and Jacob were never found after they were reported missing. The police said it was a cult ritual gone wrong. We moved shortly after as it spooked my parents and I was put back into homeschool. I did find new friends though, ones that didn't pressure me and cared for my comfortability. One thing to take away from this long story is stick up for yourself. Peer pressure can be a terrible thing, and it could even lead to your death.